So, there's some big changes coming to Elite Dangerous. A brand new, huge, industrial-looking SRV called the Rhino. That's a surface vehicle connected to the next new part of the game, which is surface mining. Yes, that's right, we're about to mine the surface of planets very soon. Frontier then very clearly focused on the planetary surfaces in a variety of different ways. The first was the Nomad. This was a ship-launched vessel that specialised on planetary surface scanning specifically for xenobiology. And now we have the Rhino, which is a huge SRV designed specifically for surface mining. Both vehicles then that focus on planetary gameplay. Is that a new direction for the game? I don't want to read too much into it, but I will come back to it later because I do have a few thoughts on that. So then, the Rhino. This is a nice design. It looks big, it looks heavy, and Frontier have said that it is well armoured as well. Now, Frontier did speak about the vehicle's driving mechanics, mentioning that it's important to get things like the suspension right, and I can totally understand that. If we consider the Scarab and the Scorpion, the two current SRVs in the game, they can be very bouncy within the game, especially on low-G planets. What might the Rhino feel like then on a low-G planet? Because it's looking like it's quite a dense and heavy vehicle, and having a large heavy vehicle like this float away would seem very strange indeed. And actually, talking of the design on this vehicle, really focusing on it here, it does remind me of something we saw much earlier on in the game's development. Just look at this image here. Again, something I'll talk about a little bit more in just a moment. The Rhino itself then is specifically designed for surface mining, as I said. Frontier haven't yet explained exactly how surface mining will work, however, or how the Rhino will function when it comes to that. However, they have stated that they wanted the Rhino to feel like a utility vehicle and also have enough armour to defend itself. And that's actually something that's completely understandable, isn't it? I mean, it's not like the Rhino is going to be able to get into dogfights with ships that want to pick on it. And by its very nature, the fact is, going after some very valuable resources, or at least I would imagine them to be valuable resources, there's a very high chance that NPCs or other players in the form of pirates will be wanting to come after you and take your stuff if they can, or just have a laugh and blow you up. Heavy armour then on the Rhino is a great idea, and you know what, I'd also like to see some surface-to-air defences for this vehicle as well. It's not something Frontier have mentioned, but we'll have to see how that goes. So when it comes to mining itself, surface mining, I'm very curious how this is going to work, because obviously we do have a variety of different resource gathering in the game right now. We can gather from asteroids in a few different ways, and we've also got various different engineering resources that we can gather as well. All of these, of course, from vehicles, without thinking about stuff we can gather on foot as well. The big question for me is whether or not the Rhino is going to be gathering existing resources, so maybe engineering materials just been able to do it much better, or perhaps the same type of resources you can gather from asteroids, but rather getting them down on the surface of planets. Or is it going to be able to gather entirely new resources, and if so, what would those resources be used for? I mean, we really have to think about this quite seriously, don't we? Because if there is a new type of resource, then those resources would be needed for other types of gameplay. And Frontier haven't mentioned other gameplay just yet, so my bet here is that the surface mining will be for the type of resources, one or another, that already exists in the game, and quite probably it will be for engineering perhaps. That would be my bet. But do let me know what you think about this in the comment section below, because it's very likely that a lot of you will have very different ideas to me. Focusing back on the Rhino itself specifically again though, they've said it's large enough that 3 players can sit in the cockpit together at the same time. That said, it does not have an interior that we can walk around, unfortunately, unlike the Nomad, and Frontier have said that this is because the interior space is used for storage as well as some other things, but obviously that's just a bit of flavour text, a bit of text-based fluff, because if Frontier wanted us to walk around inside the Rhino, they could have just easily attached a different piece of text to the lore to it and then enabled to do that. However, either way, we do have 3 people in the cockpit, which is great, and it's a first for a ground vehicle in Elite, and that's very nice indeed. Now, another point here on why there's no walkable interior, aside from Frontier not being able to or not wanting to do that just yet, Frontier have said that the Rhino has its own equipment on board, and they aren't revealing just yet what that equipment does, but it seems obvious it will be mining equipment. Now, here's a question I have, and the answer might well be obvious, but I don't like to assume when it comes to these things. Now, my assumption, I don't like to assume, but my assumption is that it will be the Rhino itself that's able to do the mining, and that there will be some sort of built-in equipment that's actually up to that task. But there is another option here, and that is the equipment is handheld, that you have to be outside the vehicle to actually use it. In other words, in this particular scenario, there would be some tools that are attached directly to the Rhino, but that you have to use them by hand. Now, I don't think this is going to be the case, but I think it's worth keeping in mind that it's a remote possibility. But yeah, like I say, I think the most likely option is that all the equipment built into the Rhino will be deployed by the Rhino and used from inside the cockpit. Whatever way this goes, though, as we can see from some of the images, the SRV, the Rhino, is actually very large. Now, Frontier have said that the Rhino cannot be deployed from a normal vehicle bay, and that a new type of vehicle bay is actually required for this. Again, we don't know what this means specifically just yet. We don't know why it is. Clearly, it means that there's going to be a new type of module because, yes, the Rhino itself is much larger than other SRVs, but it also begs the question for which ships would this Rhino actually be compatible with? Because, yes, like I say, the Rhino is larger than SRV, so it seems very unlikely that it will be able to go inside a Sidewinder, for example. Now, Frontier's promo images for this do have the Rhino near a Type 8, and this, to me, suggests pretty strongly that the Rhino will be compatible with the Type 8, and that means potentially with other medium-sized ships too. So there's a lot going on with this vehicle, and like I say, it does open up a lot of possibilities and a lot of potential for the game itself. And yeah, that includes a whole new gameplay loop of surface mining. And that also leads on to one thing which I'm sure is going to be a point of contention with the community. Because for the first few months, the Rhino is going to be available only for ARCs, meaning that initially, at least, the only way players will be able to get involved with the new gameplay loop of surface mining is by spending that real-world money. This is during what Frontier term as the Rhino Early Access period. All their new vehicles, all their new ships come with this Early Access period, which tends to last a few months before the vehicle is then available in-game for in-game credits. Now, I have a feeling that this whole deal is not going to go over particularly well with the community, and that's understandably so. Whilst I'm okay in principle with the idea of cash for ships, that has always been on the principle, on the condition that the players are buying ships and not gameplay. So the Rhino is a very different story here. It's not something that I want to get too deep into in this particular video, but I do want to say that I think it's a bit of an unwise move from Frontier for a variety of different reasons. That is, the whole idea of not selling the Rhino. Selling the Rhino itself is fine, but effectively selling this gameplay loop. Now that said, I do fully understand that those 2 points do go hand in hand. It's very difficult to have one without the other, and it's a bind that Frontier is certainly facing here. They're in the position where they want to monetize vehicles, and this seems to be working very well for the game because since they've been monetizing vehicles and ships, we have seen a lot of updates. And whilst we shouldn't perhaps assume that all these updates are directly because of the financial return they're getting from the vehicles, I think it's a fairly reasonable assumption to actually make. So like I say, Frontier very clearly wanting to monetize vehicles, but they also want to use those vehicles to introduce new gameplay. And I just feel that this is moving further along that slippery slope that people warned about when ships for ARCs were first announced. Let me know what you think about this in the comments section below, because I suspect for a lot of people it's not going to be a problem, but for another big chunk of the community, a small chunk of the community, whatever, it likely is going to be a problem. In fact, I'll be very surprised if it's not. At any rate, the Rhino is going to be available later this month. It's coming along with a new operation mission too, so that's going to be pretty interesting to see. The new SRV then is very exciting for me for Elite Dangerous. It's something I've been very keen to see for a long time. And in fact, that takes me back to something else that I want to talk about. It brings back the old concept from Elite Dangerous's old days. So here on screen right now, you can see some concept art images from Elite, actually well over a decade ago at this point. Notice some similarities. It's been clear, to me at least, for a long time, that this is the direction that Frontier have always wanted to go in with Elite. You don't release concept art like this if it wasn't planned at some point. Now, there's a lot of other ideas from back then that still haven't made it into the game, And some people in the community have given up on those ideas, so that's understandable. And then there's others in the community that complain that players should no longer bring these ideas up because they say Frontier have moved on, that Frontier are not thinking about these things, and that the old guard, that the community from old should just give up on their whole idea and accept Elite for what it is today. Well, my take on this is that yes, Frontier have moved on, Elite is a different game, but clearly Frontier have not abandoned the old ideas they had for Elite, and that is a very good thing. And this is demonstrable by the existence of the Rhino itself and the fact that how close it mirrors some of these older concepts that Frontier had with the original art. And that brings me on to another thought that I touched on earlier near the start of the video. We've now got two vehicles focusing on a planetary surface gameplay. Wouldn't it be great if Frontier were considering expanding the number of types of planets that we could land on? Now obviously that's full-on speculation, there's no reason at all to actually assume that, beyond the fact that we've got two vehicles that are actually focusing on planetary surfaces themselves. So, like I say, it's pure speculation, but we can still dream, right? I'm very much looking forward then to seeing what Frontier come up with the Rhino to get hands on with it. Hopefully that's not going to be too long. They do say, like I say, later this month. And then of course, it's very intriguing to see the direction that Elite Dangerous has been going in so far this year. Looking forward to seeing more. Do let me know your thoughts and feelings about all of this in the comments section below. There is another video on the screen right here if you want to check that out. Do take care, and I'll catch you next time.